Prayer is not just a ritual or a habit. It is the very lifeline that connects us to the heart of God. When we bring everything to Him in prayer, we open the door for His presence to enter our struggles, our burdens, and our daily challenges. Too often, people carry heavy loads that were never meant to be carried alone. Worries about tomorrow, regrets of yesterday, and uncertainties of today can weigh down the spirit, but prayer lifts those burdens and places them in the hands of the one who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we could ask or think. It is in that surrender that lives are changed. Prayer is not about eloquent words or long speeches. It is about a heart poured out before the Lord in honesty and faith. A whispered prayer in the silence of the night can reach the throne of heaven just as powerfully as a loud cry of desperation. Every time a believer bends the knee or lifts the heart in prayer, heaven listens. It is a direct line to the God who never slumbers nor sleeps, the Father who loves to hear His children call upon His name. In prayer, strength is renewed, peace is restored, and hope begins to bloom in places where despair once reigned. The greatest truth about prayer is that it is not limited by time, distance, or circumstance. Even in the darkest valleys, prayer becomes the light that guides the way. In the stormiest nights, prayer becomes the anchor that keeps the soul secure. When nothing seems to change outwardly, prayer changes the heart inwardly, aligning it with the will of God. Through prayer, battles are fought and victories are won in ways unseen to human eyes. It is the unseen weapon, the hidden power, the secret to overcoming. Yet prayer is not only about this life, it is also the assurance of the promise of heaven. Every prayer prayed in faith reaches beyond the temporary trials of earth and touches eternity. Prayer reminds us that this world is not our final home, that one day tears will be wiped away, pain will cease, and joy will never end. Heaven is the ultimate answer to every prayer, the eternal promise that makes every struggle worth enduring. Each prayer carries us closer to that hope, keeping our eyes fixed on what is eternal rather than what is fleeting. A life-changing prayer is simply a prayer that trusts God with everything. It is the decision to stop leaning on human strength and to start leaning on divine power. When everything is brought to God in prayer, nothing is too broken to be healed, no sin too deep to be forgiven, and no dream too lost to be restored. And in the end, prayer not only transforms circumstances, but transforms the heart, shaping it for the glory of God and preparing it for the eternal joy of heaven. Prayer is the lifeline that binds the human heart to the heart of God. It is not limited to a particular place, time, or method, but it is the constant invitation to enter into fellowship with the Creator. Life is filled with burdens, uncertainties, and battles, and many times people try to carry those weights on their own. Yet when prayer becomes the first response rather than the last resort, strength is found in the presence of God. To take everything to Him in prayer is to acknowledge that He is greater than every trial, wiser than every decision, and stronger than every weakness. It is a confession of dependence, a surrender that unlocks divine intervention. The beauty of prayer is that it requires no appointment and no mediator but Christ Himself. The line to heaven is always open and the Father is always listening. Through prayer, intimacy with God deepens. Just as a relationship grows through conversation, so too does the believer's relationship with the Lord flourish as time is spent in His presence. It is not about the length of words or the beauty of phrases, but about the sincerity of the heart. Even the shortest prayer whispered in faith has the power to reach heaven and move the hand of God. In moments of weakness, prayer provides strength. In times of confusion, prayer brings clarity. In seasons of joy, prayer becomes thanksgiving. It is the rhythm of a life surrendered, the heartbeat of faith that keeps the soul alive. What makes prayer so vital is that it lifts the burden from human shoulders and places it upon the one who has promised to carry every care. Worry loses its power when it is replaced with prayer, and fear dissolves when faith is stirred in God's presence. Each prayer reminds the soul that it is not alone in the journey, that the God who formed the heavens and the earth bends down to listen to the cries of His children. Nothing is too small or too great to bring before Him, for He delights in the details of our lives. A life anchored in prayer becomes a life unshaken by the storms of this world. The trials may come, the valleys may deepen, and the mountains may rise high. But the believer who clings to God in prayer will always find peace, strength, and assurance. Prayer is not just communication, it is communion. The daily lifeline that sustains, guides, and transforms the soul. Prayer has a way of shaping the heart before it ever shifts the circumstances. Many people approach God thinking the goal is to change situations, to see immediate answers, or to escape trials. Yet the deeper purpose of prayer is transformation within. When a soul comes before God in honesty, with every weakness, doubt, and desire laid bare, something begins to happen on the inside. The weight of self-reliance is lifted, the anxiety of control is surrendered, and the heart begins to align with the will of the Father. In that sacred exchange, peace that passes all understanding replaces worry, and strength replaces despair. Prayer may not always alter the storm outside, but it calms the storm within, creating a heart anchored in faith. The greatest evidence of this truth is seen in the lives of those who walk closely with God. They may face hardships like everyone else, but they respond differently because prayer has shaped their perspective. Where others see impossibility, they see opportunity for God to work. Where others crumble under pressure, they stand firm because prayer has built resilience in their spirit. Circumstances might remain unmovable, yet the believer becomes unshaken because their heart has been molded by prayer. It is not the absence of problems that defines the strength of faith, but the presence of peace in the middle of them. Prayer draws the heart closer to God's desires. Often people enter prayer with their own plans and agendas, asking the Lord to bend His will to theirs. But true prayer is the surrender of those desires in exchange for His perfect plan. The more a person prays, the more they come to realize that God's will is higher, His timing wiser, and His purposes greater than their own. This shift is not immediate but gradual, like clay being shaped by the potter's hands. Over time, prayer softens the heart, purifies motives, and teaches His trust. Even unanswered prayers are not wasted, for they refine faith and build endurance. God uses the waiting season to teach patience, deepen dependence, and increase expectation for what is to come. In this way, prayer becomes a classroom where the soul learns to trust, to rest, and to grow. Though circumstances may take time to change, the heart changes first. And that change prepares the believer to handle whatever comes with grace, strength, and unwavering faith. Prayer proves its power in every season of life, whether in the heights of joy or the depths of sorrow. It is not only a refuge for times of trouble, but also a song of gratitude in moments of blessing. When life is filled with laughter and success, prayer lifts the heart in thanksgiving, reminding us that every good and perfect gift comes from above. When days are dark and filled with tears, prayer becomes the anchor that holds steady, giving assurance that even in the valley, God is near. Seasons change, people change, circumstances change, but prayer remains constant, binding the soul to the one who never changes. In times of trial, prayer becomes the strength that carries us through. It quiets the mind that is overwhelmed and steadies the spirit that feels weak. When there are no answers and the future seems uncertain, prayer creates a space where faith rises above fear. It does not remove every storm, but it keeps the believer rooted in trust that the storm will not last forever. Just as a ship is anchored to keep from drifting in violent waters, prayer anchors the soul so it will not be swept away by the winds of life. It is in these seasons of hardship that the believer discovers prayer's deepest power, sustaining hope when everything else feels fragile. Yet in seasons of joy, prayer is equally important. Too often people forget God when things are going well, but prayer teaches dependence in both blessing and burden. When hearts are lifted in gratitude, prayer guards against pride and keeps the focus on the giver rather than the gift. It transforms moments of happiness into worship and ensures that prosperity does not lead to forgetfulness. Prayer is the thread that keeps both trials and triumphs connected to the presence of God, ensuring that every season of life is lived in His fellowship. Prayer is not seasonal, it is eternal. It belongs in the everyday rhythm of life, whether we are weeping or rejoicing, laboring or resting, waiting or receiving. It shapes our responses, strengthens our spirits, and sustains us through the journey. In every season, prayer proves to be the unshakable anchor, the hidden strength, and the unbroken connection to the one who walks with us always. Prayer constantly reminds the heart that this world is not the final destination. Every time a believer lifts their voice to heaven, they are reaching beyond the temporary struggles of earth and touching the eternal promise of God. Prayer redirects the focus from the pain of today to the hope of tomorrow. It whispers to the soul that trials are fleeting, that tears will not last forever, and that there is a place prepared where sorrow will never enter. When the weight of life feels overwhelming, prayer becomes the gentle reminder that heaven is the true home of the believer, a place where rest and joy are everlasting. In moments of despair, prayer points the eyes upward, away from the dust of the earth and toward the glory of eternity. It strengthens faith with the assurance that every step here is leading closer to the promise of being with the Lord forever. Even unanswered prayers on earth find their ultimate fulfillment in the presence of God in heaven, where all questions will be resolved and all longings satisfied. Prayer builds anticipation for that day, stirring the heart to live faithfully now in light of the eternal hope to come. The promise of heaven gives prayer its depth, for it is not just about changing circumstances in this world, but preparing the soul for the world to come. Each prayer brings alignment with eternal values, teaching the heart to hold lightly to what is passing and cling tightly to what is everlasting. It gives perspective that wealth, success, and even suffering are temporary, but the reward of heaven is eternal. Prayer keeps the believer watchful, ready, and anchored in the hope that Christ's return is sure. Every prayer of faith is a step toward eternity. It is a conversation not only with the God who sustains life today, but with the God who promises eternal life tomorrow. This is why prayer fills the heart with peace even in the fog. Ace of death, for the believer knows that heaven is the final answer to every longing. In prayer, the soul learns to live with eyes fixed not on the shifting shadows of earth, but on the everlasting light of heaven, the promised home where God himself will dwell with his people forever. A life-changing prayer is not found in eloquence or ritual, but in the simple act of surrendering everything into God's hands. It is the prayer that chooses trust over fear, faith over doubt, and dependence over self-reliance. When someone truly brings everything to God in prayer, nothing remains hidden or withheld. The broken pieces, the secret fears, the deepest wounds, and even the silent desires of the heart are all placed before him. In that moment of honesty and surrender, transformation begins. God takes what is weak and breathes strength into it. He takes what is lost and restores it, and he takes what seems impossible and makes a way where there was none. Prayer has the power to reshape lives because it invites the presence of the Almighty into every situation. Where there was chaos, peace enters. Where there was confusion, clarity arises. Where there was despair, hope blooms anew. This transformation is not always visible instantly, but over time it becomes undeniable. A heart that continually seeks God in prayer becomes softer, wiser, and stronger. It learns patience in waiting, courage in trials, and gratitude in blessings. In this way, prayer not only changes what is around us, but more importantly, it changes who we are within. The beauty of a life-changing prayer is that it is available to anyone at any moment. It does not require status, wealth, or perfection, only a willing heart. Even the simplest cry like, "Lord, help me," carries immeasurable power when spoken in faith. God delights in the prayers of his people, no matter how small they may seem. Each genuine prayer invites heaven's power into earthly life, and with it comes the assurance that nothing is beyond God's reach. No failure is too great for forgiveness, no wound too deep for healing, no situation too broken for restoration. When life is lived in constant prayer, transformation becomes a daily reality. Worry is replaced with trust, weakness with strength, and despair with unshakable hope. Prayer molds character, refines the spirit, and prepares the believer for both the challenges of earth and the glory of eternity. Truly, a life-changing prayer is one that trusts God with everything, allowing him to accomplish what human effort never could. It is the beginning of true freedom, lasting peace, and eternal victory.